from the second G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank of Governors meeting. We are now joined by Pak Febrio Kacaribu, the Head of Fiscal Policy from the Indonesian Ministry of Finance, who joins us from Washington, D.C. in the United States. Hi, Pak Febrio. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know it's quite early there.
It's okay. Good morning from here.
Okay, good afternoon from here, Pak. So first of all, as we saw just now, there was quite a bit of tension at the latest FMCBG meeting. These are indeed very challenging times, but before we get to all of that, I want to talk about the results and the focus of the meeting. So could you please explain to us and our viewers what the main focus of the second FMCBG meeting was and how it aims to help current economic conditions of inflation, food shortages, and many challenges at this time, Pak?
Yes, it has been a very challenging time since the war in Ukraine happened. So the second FMCBG in Washington, D.C. This time around, we designed it to be focusing on 4 sessions. The first one we specifically designed for everybody, all countries, to discuss about the global risk, especially as a result and after the war in Ukraine. In the last 1 month, at least, we see that the price of commodities and price of food increasing very fast in the last 1 month. And this is affecting all countries and disproportionately more affecting the poor countries in the world. So it is very important for G20 to show leadership on how to anticipate and to respond to the condition that we are facing globally now. And we see that the global economic outlook for the economic growth already corrected by 0.8 percentage point by the IMF. So that's the first session. The second session, though, and the third and the fourth, still we're talking about big agendas that are really important for the world, that are really important for the G20. The second the second session was on health, especially with the pandemic and some countries already entering the period of endemic. It is very important for us to collaborate even further on how to anticipate if there is a future pandemic. On the third session, we're talking about how the international financial architecture, especially on how the G20 and the world helping the countries that are really highly indebted, especially those countries that are poor and having debt beyond 100% of their GDP. So it is really important and very timely, especially in the time of high commodity prices and also high food prices nowadays. And last but not least, we also talk about the sustainable finance and continue how to work together among the G20 countries to come up with not only sustainable finance, but also transition finance, how countries transition from currently with fossil fuel into transition energy into cleaner energy, and also transforming all of the economies into a greener economy.
Right, but so as you mentioned, we are facing many challenges at this moment, high inflation being one of them. Now, of course, as Ibu Sri Mulyani said, there needs to be cooperation. Cooperation is important, but as we saw just now, there has been quite some tension, some divide among G20 members. Some G20 members expressing concern over Russian participation. So Indonesia, as holding the G20 presidency role, I mean, how is Indonesia trying to keep this cooperation together, especially since one of the members are saying Russia should be out. So because cooperation is important, so how is Indonesia keeping this cooperation and unity together in the G20? What efforts are you making, Pak?
This is not easy, and we have been facing these challenges in the last 1 month, especially since the war in Ukraine started. The Indonesian presidency of G20, clearly we know that the G20 is built on consensus. So everybody is a part of the G20, try to reach consensus. Every time we make decision, it is based on consensus. So the only way to do that is the presidency to consult and to talk bilaterally to all of the members. And that's what we have done in the last 1 month, day by day, week by week, meeting and consulting with all of the members. And everybody understand that G20 is based on consensus. So it is not in the right of the presidency to disinvite anybody from G20. It is the right of the presidency to invite additional country if needed. And that's what we basically do so far. We've been consulting with all of the members, and we're getting a lot of support from all countries, including those opposing the attendance of the Russian. But also we invited Ukraine into the meeting, and that also reduced the tension and open again dialogue and collaboration. And hopefully we can find solution as to how. First, we would like to see de-escalation. That's for sure. Everybody would like to see this de-escalation. But then also how the world, and especially G20, help the world to contain the impact of this global risk as a result of the war in Ukraine.
Okay, but so regarding containing the impact of the war, what kind of concrete plans or efforts were kind of drawn up during this latest FMCBG meeting? What kind of concrete actions will be taken to mitigate those impacts, Pat?
Well, currently this is still very fluid because of the tension. Clearly, the talk is, at least the talk is going, and IMF, World Bank, multilateral development banks, and all of the member countries still continue talking about how to mitigate the impact. Back to the February communique that we talk about, whenever a country needs to come up with policies to respond to the current situation, we would like the policy, especially the exit policy from the pandemic and from the crisis, to be well planned, well calibrated, and well communicated to the rest of the world. So as we are sensing and we are continuing the collaboration among member countries. In terms of the commodity price and the food price, all countries will have to face and respond with their own fiscal and or monetary policies. But it is very important for us to at least to communicate and collaborate as to how each country will actually respond with their own policies domestically that will actually impact the global economy as well.
All right, but just very shortly, we have a minute before we have to go to break. But it seems like, is it difficult to get consensus between all the members to come up to a certain point? Is it really difficult right now to come to a consensus, especially regarding the mitigation of the impact of the war?
The consensus is at least for the common understanding of the impact and who do we need to help a lot more, especially those poor countries and high indebted countries as well. So there are a lot of progress on that, especially on how the IMF, World Bank, and also lender countries to start talking about how to help several highly indebted countries, poor countries in Africa. This is called the common framework. There are countries like Chad, Zambia, and Ethiopia. They've been always, since several years ago, already discussed to be helped by member countries. And now the progress is quite promising. There is a form of credit committee for the three countries, for Ethiopia, Zambia, and also Chad.
Okay, Pak Febrio. So, it's quite important to sort of list the things that need to be sorted out, and it seems like there is some consensus on that, Pak Febrio. But we are going to take a very short break, and we're going to continue this dialogue right after this short messages. Be right back. Okay, well, we're back with Pak Kacaribu, the Head of Fiscal Policy from the Indonesian Ministry of Finance. Now, Pak, as we heard just now, the Fed is hinting at a steep rate hike of possibly by 50 basis points. Of course, such tightening of monetary policy, typically leads to capital outflow from emerging markets. It's risky for many countries. Bank Indonesia Governor reaffirmed the importance of well-communicated, well-planned, well-calibrated central bank policy. So how is the G20, Indonesia presidency, and the FMCBG addressing this issue, making sure that central banks commit to communicated moves, Pak?
So that's exactly what Jerome Powell just mentioned just now. It is as a result of the talk at G20 level that we would like to see a well-planned, well-calibrated, and well-communicated policy changes. So it is very good that we actually have the common understanding that any policy changes from a country, especially big countries like US, will have a big impact to the whole world. So it is very important for the exit policy or increase in monetary policy, for example, monetary policy rate. It is very important for it to be well communicated. Then all countries can anticipate it as early as possible. And that also saying that the multilateral development banks like World Bank and IMF would need to step up to anticipate the risk that are usually coming as a result of tight monetary policy changes as fast as what the Fed is actually indicating now, because the one that we have seen in the last several times of the experience of policy hikes by the Fed, especially the pace of the increase of the interest rate, would actually affect the developing economies, especially as a result of, for example, capital outflow. Now, talking about the impact on Indonesia, if I may, Indonesia is a little bit well placed on anticipating this risk. Compared to, for example, 2008, 2009, Indonesian economy is much better now, especially in terms of the current account deficit that we had back then. This year, we are experiencing current account surplus as a result of a commodity price. We actually have an increase in export, and our import is still increasing, but at a slower pace than the export. So we are actually looking at current account surplus instead of deficit. So Indonesia on this particular aspect is actually quite well positioned, but we still need to be vigilant as to how we are anticipating the risk.
Right, of course. Indonesia is more well positioned right now, but of course there's going to be many more, or possibly many more rate hikes from the United States. So from the Indonesian delegate side, from the G20, from the finance track, is there some concern maybe towards the later end of this year regarding the impact of the rate hikes from the US and other advanced countries into Indonesia? Is there some concern and maybe some steps that Indonesia will take?
We already anticipated this, and we talked about this since months ago, even before war in Ukraine, especially the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Indonesia, and also OJK, especially in terms of we are working and communicating at the KSSK to make sure that we actually anticipate the potential spillover from the rate hike in the US. We already made a lot of plan and scenarios, and we should be ready. And again, as I said before, based on our assessment, we are much better positioned compared to last time a policy hike happened, like back in 2008, 2009, or even taper tantrum back in 2013 to 2015.
Okay, Pat. Now, we are kind of running out of time, but another major challenge that the world is still facing right now is, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is also causing a significant financing gap. It's costly to deal with. So talk to us about how the G20 finance track aims to deal with this financing gap due to COVID-19, especially with the establishment of a financial intermediary fund. Just talk to us about that, Pat.
This is actually a testimony of how even during these very challenging times for collaboration and multilateralism, but on the health issues, we are getting much support, and most countries actually supporting the agenda of building the global preparedness for a future pandemic. And now we are in the talk of setting up a financial intermediary fund for us to be able to finance on how global preparedness for future pandemic actually being financed. What happened is going to be is that we are going to support and improve and even strengthen the role of WHO with the financing that we are going to collect from a lot of contributions, a lot of countries. So the FIF, the Financial Intermediary Fund that we are going to form, this is going to be the very big step, starting point for us to be able to collaborate and better manage the future risk of any future pandemic. And this is again one of the big deliverables that we would like to provide from our presidency in 2022. And we are quite optimistic that this is still going to have a very good result by the end of our presidency in November.
All right. Optimism and, of course, cooperation, as Indonesian delegates have said, is still very important right now. We hope for the best because there are many challenges this year. Pak Febrio Kacaribu, the head of fiscal policy from the Indonesian Ministry of Finance, joining us from Washington, D.C., where it's very early in the morning. Thank you so much, Pak, for taking your time to talk with us.
Thank you.